He gave her his kidney to save her life. On their wedding day, he found her in bed with his best man, but she was never sick. This is the story of Marcus Bennett, a man who discovered the truth in a hotel room that destroyed everything he believed. This is not just betrayal. This is evil disguised as love. Marcus Bennett grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in a neighborhood where people knew each other's names and looked out for one another. He was not a man of many words. He was the kind of man who believed in action, in doing, in showing up when it mattered most. His father had been a firefighter, a man who ran into burning buildings while others ran out, a man who taught Marcus that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Marcus learned early that love is not just a feeling you have when everything is easy. Love is a decision you make when things get hard. Love is sacrifice. Love is showing up. And when the time came, when the woman he loved needed him most, Marcus did not hesitate. Her name was Cassandra Lee. Everyone called her Cassie. She was beautiful, the kind of beauty that stopped conversations when she walked into a room. Long, dark hair that fell in waves down her back, eyes that sparkled when she smiled, a laugh that could light up even the darkest days. But Cassie was more than just a pretty face. She was smart, sharp, ambitious. She worked as a marketing executive at a tech company downtown, climbing the ladder faster than anyone expected. She had dreams, big dreams. She wanted the corner office, the six-figure salary, the life that looked perfect on the outside. And then one day, her body started betraying her. Or at least, that is what she told everyone. That was the story Cassie told, and Marcus believed every word. Marcus and Cassie met at a charity event, one of those fancy fundraisers where people in expensive clothes drink wine and write checks to feel good about themselves. Marcus was there because his company, a construction firm where he worked as a project manager, had sponsored the event. Cassie was there because she organized it, moving through the crowd with confidence and charm, making sure every donor felt important. They talked by the bar, and something clicked. He liked that she did not try too hard, that she seemed genuine in a room full of people pretending. She liked that he listened, really listened, without waiting for his turn to talk. 3 months later, they were inseparable. 6 months after that, he told her he loved her. A year after that, she told him she was sick. It started with fatigue, she said, then the headaches, then the swelling in her ankles, the nausea, the weakness that made it hard to get out of bed in the morning. By the time the doctors supposedly figured out what was wrong, her kidneys were failing. She needed a transplant, they said, and time was running out. That was the story Cassie told. The doctors showed them test results, blood work that looked terrible, scans that showed damaged kidneys. Everything seemed real. Everything seemed legitimate. Cassie cried when they told her the news. She held Marcus's hand and said she was scared. She said she did not want to die. And Marcus, looking at the woman he loved, made a decision right then and there. He would save her, no matter what it took. Marcus, without hesitation, without even thinking about it, got tested to see if he could donate. The testing process took weeks. Blood work, scans, psychological evaluations to make sure he understood what he was doing. Through it all, Marcus never wavered. He was determined. He was going to save the woman he loved. And then the results came back. He was a match, a perfect match. The doctors said it was rare, that kind of compatibility between two unrelated people. 1 in 100,000, they said. Marcus said it was fate. He said it was a sign that they were meant to be together. Cassie cried happy tears when they told her. She hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. She whispered thank you over and over, and Marcus felt like a hero. The surgery happened on a cold Tuesday morning in February. Marcus woke up early, his stomach tight with nerves. They arrived at the hospital before dawn. The staff prepped them both. Marcus changed into a hospital gown. They inserted the IV. The anesthesiologist explained what would happen. Marcus looked across the pre-op area and saw Cassie on another bed. She was scared. He could see it in her eyes. He reached out and squeezed her hand. "We are going to be okay," he said. "Both of us." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. and then they wheeled him away. The last thing Marcus remembered was the ceiling tiles passing by overhead, one after another, and then nothing. Darkness. When he woke up hours later, there was a dull, deep ache in his side. The scar, the proof. He had done it. Marcus woke up in a hospital bed with a scar running along his side and a pain that would last for weeks, maybe months. But he smiled when he opened his eyes, because down the hall in another room, Cassie was waking up too. And for the first time in months, her body was supposedly working again. Her new kidney, his kidney, was filtering her blood, keeping her alive. The doctors said the transplant was a success. Cassie cried when she saw him later that day. She held his hand and whispered, "Thank you," over and over, her voice breaking with emotion. Marcus kissed her forehead and told her she did not need to thank him. "You would have done the same for me," he said, and at the time, he believed that. He believed she would have given anything to save him. Recovery was slow and painful. Cassie had to take anti-rejection medication every day for the rest of her life. Pills that would suppress her immune system so her body would not attack the new kidney. She was fragile for months, tired easily, had to avoid crowds to reduce her risk of infection. Marcus took care of her through all of it. He cooked her meals, bland foods that would not upset her stomach. He drove her to every doctor's appointment, every follow-up, every blood test. He sat with her during the long, boring hours of recovery, when all she could do was lie in bed and watch television. He did not complain. He did not ask for anything in return. He just loved her. And Cassie, she seemed grateful. She smiled more as the months went by. Her energy returned. By summer, 6 months after the transplant, Cassie was back at work, putting in long hours at the office, rebuilding her career. She looked healthy again. Her skin had color. Her eyes were bright. She moved with energy and purpose. Marcus watched her transformation with pride. "This is what I gave her," he thought. "This is what love looks like." By fall, she was talking about the future, about trips they would take, about the house they would buy, about the life they would build together. She talked about children, about growing old together, about all the dreams they would make real. And Marcus believed every word. Because why would she lie? Why would someone who owed him her life betray him? It did not make sense, but evil rarely does. And Cassie was very, very good at pretending. By winter, Marcus asked her to marry him. The proposal was simple, nothing fancy or elaborate. Just the two of them on the couch one Sunday evening, her head resting on his shoulder, a movie playing in the background that neither of them was really watching. Marcus turned to her and said, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Cassie's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak at first, and then she whispered yes. Marcus slipped a small diamond ring onto her finger. It was not the biggest ring, not the most expensive, but it was real. And so was the love he felt when he put it there. Or so he thought. Because love, real love, is not tested in the easy moments when everything is going right. The wedding was planned for June, a year and a half after the transplant. Cassie wanted something big, something beautiful, something people would remember. She wanted the white dress, the flowers, the venue with the view overlooking the city. Marcus did not care about any of that. He just wanted to marry her. But he gave her what she wanted because that is what you do when you love someone. You give them their dreams. He worked extra hours to pay for everything. The venue was expensive. The photographer, the caterer, the band, the flowers, all of it cost more than Marcus had ever imagined. But he did not complain. He took on side projects, stayed late at the office, did whatever it took to make her happy. Because she deserved it. After everything she had been through, she deserved her perfect day. His best man, Trevor King, helped with everything. Trevor had been Marcus's friend since high school. They played basketball together, went to college together, stood by each other through breakups and job losses and every hard thing life threw at them. Trevor was more than a best man. He was a brother. And Marcus trusted him completely, The way you trust someone who has proven themselves 1,000 times over. Trevor helped pick out the tuxedos. He organized the bachelor party. He gave advice about marriage, about commitment, about being a good husband. And Marcus listened. He valued Trevor's opinion. He valued their friendship. He never imagined, not even for a second, that Trevor would betray him. That was his first mistake. Trusting people just because you have known them a long time. The night before the wedding, Marcus could not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with thoughts of the next day. Tomorrow he would marry the woman he saved. The woman he loved. The woman who wore his kidney inside her body. A permanent reminder of what he had given, of how much he cared. He thought about the vows he would say. For better or for worse. In sickness and in health. He had already lived those vows. He had already proven his love in the most literal way possible. And tomorrow it would all be official. Tomorrow she would be his wife. He smiled in the dark, feeling something close to peace. Tomorrow everything would be perfect. But tomorrow never comes the way you expect it to. And for Marcus, tomorrow would bring a truth he was not ready to face. The wedding was set for 2 p.m. at a boutique hotel just outside the city. The kind of place with manicured gardens and chandeliers and staff in tuxedos. The ceremony would be in the garden under a white arch covered in roses. The reception would be in the grand ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Marcus arrived early that morning, his hands shaking as he adjusted his tie in the mirror of the groom's suite. His groomsmen were with him, laughing and joking and trying to calm his nerves. Trevor clapped him on the shoulder and said, "You ready for this, man?" Marcus nodded. "More than ready," he said, and he meant it. He had never been more sure of anything in his life. But while Marcus was getting ready downstairs, adjusting his cufflinks and practicing his vows in his head, something else was happening upstairs. Cassie was in the bridal suite with her bridesmaids, or at least she was supposed to be. The room was filled with laughter and champagne, and the smell of hairspray and perfume. But one of the bridesmaids, a woman named Rachel who had known Cassie since college, noticed something was off. Cassie kept checking her phone. She kept glancing at the door. She seemed distracted, nervous in a way that went beyond normal wedding jitters. Finally, Cassie said she needed a moment alone. She needed to clear her head before the ceremony. The bridesmaids did not think much of it. Wedding day jitters, they said to each other as they left the suite and headed downstairs to check on the flowers and the seating arrangements. They left Cassie alone, and that is when she sent the text. A text to Trevor. Room 312, 5 minutes. That was all the text said. Simple. Direct. A message between two people who had done this before, many times before. Cassie looked at herself in the mirror one more time. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. In a few hours, she would be married to Marcus, the man who gave her his kidney, the man who trusted her completely. And she felt nothing. No guilt, no shame, just calculation. She wrapped her robe tighter around herself and waited. Downstairs, Trevor read the message. He was supposed to be standing by his best friend's side, making sure Marcus was calm and ready for the biggest day of his life. But instead, Trevor told the groomsmen he needed to make a phone call, and he walked upstairs, just like he had done so many times before. Marcus did not notice Trevor was gone at first. He was too focused on what was about to happen. The ceremony was starting in 30 minutes. The guests were arriving, filling the garden chairs, taking photos of the flowers and the arch and the view. The music was being set up. The officiant was going over his notes. Everything was moving forward, exactly as planned, like a machine with 1,000 moving parts all working in perfect harmony. But upstairs in room 312, something else was moving forward too. Trevor walked down the hotel hallway, his heart pounding. Part of him knew this was wrong. Part of him knew he should turn around, go back to his best friend, be the man Marcus thought he was. But he kept walking, because he had made his choice months ago, and there was no going back now. Cassie opened the door when Trevor knocked. She was still in her robe, her hair half done, her makeup not yet finished. Trevor stepped inside and closed the door behind him. And what happened next, what they said to each other, what they did in those stolen minutes before the wedding, would remain a secret for exactly 27 minutes. Because that is when Marcus came looking for his best man. That is when Marcus walked down the hallway, calling Trevor's name, wondering where he had gone. The ceremony was about to start. Everyone was waiting. The guests were seated. The music was ready, and Marcus needed his best man by his side. He checked the groom's suite. Empty. He checked the lobby. Not there. And then he heard a sound, coming from upstairs, and something in his gut told him to follow it. Marcus walked up the stairs, his dress shoes clicking on the marble steps. He walked down the hallway past door after door, calling Trevor's name. "Trevor, you up here?" No answer. He kept walking, his heart starting to beat faster for reasons he did not yet understand. And then he saw it. Room 312. The door was slightly open, just a crack. And from inside, he heard voices. Low. Quiet. A man's voice. A woman's voice. Marcus frowned. He walked toward the door. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. "Trevor, you in there?" Still nothing. Marcus tried the handle. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open slowly, his heart racing now, some primal instinct warning him that something was very, very wrong. And then he saw them. Then, Cassie was sitting on the edge of the bed, her robe pulled tight around her, her face flushed. Trevor was standing by the window, his shirt untucked, his tie loose, his face pale and guilty. They both turned when Marcus walked in, and for a moment, nobody said anything. The silence in that room was suffocating, thick with shame and fear, and the weight of secrets that could no longer be hidden. Marcus looked at Cassie. He looked at Trevor. His mind was trying to make sense of what he was seeing, trying to find an innocent explanation, some logical reason why his fiancée and his best friend would be alone in a hotel room 30 minutes before the wedding. But there was none. The air in the room was heavy with guilt, and Marcus knew. He knew before either of them said a word. His entire world crumbled in an instant. "What is this?" Marcus said. His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. Cassie stood up, her hands shaking, her eyes wide with panic. "Marcus," she started, but he cut her off. "What is this?" he repeated, louder this time, his voice echoing in the small room. Trevor stepped forward, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a wild animal. "Man, listen," Trevor said. But Marcus was not listening. His eyes were locked on Cassie, on the woman he saved, on the woman he loved, on the woman who was supposed to walk down the aisle in less than 30 minutes and become his wife. "Tell me this is not what it looks like," Marcus said, his voice breaking now, the calm shattering into something raw and desperate. And the silence that followed was the loudest sound he had ever heard. Because Cassie could not tell him that. She could not lie. Not anymore. Not with him standing right there, seeing the truth with his own eyes. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her hands were shaking. Tears started to form in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness or guilt. They were tears of being caught, of knowing that everything she had built was about to collapse. Trevor finally looked at Marcus, and there were tears in his eyes too. "Man, I'm sorry," Trevor said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sorry," Marcus said, his voice rising. "You're sorry? This is my wedding day. This is my wife. Or she was supposed to be." His voice cracked. "And you, his best friend, his brother, had betrayed him in the worst possible way." The room felt like it was closing in. Marcus could not breathe. "How long?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper now. Cassie closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, please," she whispered. "How long?" he shouted, his voice so loud it seemed to shake the walls. Cassie flinched. 6 months, she said quietly, the words barely audible. 6 months. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart until it stopped beating. 6 months. That meant it started before the engagement. That meant it was happening while he was planning their wedding, while he was working extra hours to pay for the dress she wanted, the venue she wanted, the life she wanted. That meant every time she smiled at him, every time she said she loved him, every time she kissed him goodnight, she was lying. Marcus felt something break inside him, something fundamental, something that could never be repaired. "Return my kidney," Marcus said. His voice was shaking now, filled with a pain so deep it seemed to come from somewhere beyond words. Cassie's eyes went wide. "What?" "Return my kidney," Marcus repeated, his voice rising with every word. "I gave you my kidney. I saved your life. I gave you a part of my body. And this is how you repay me?" Cassie started crying, her whole body shaking. "Marcus, I'm sorry," she sobbed. "Sorry?" Marcus laughed, a bitter, broken sound that did not sound like him at all. "You're sorry? I gave you life. I gave you everything, and you gave me this." He looked at Trevor, his best friend, his brother, the man he would have died for. "And you. You're supposed to be my brother." Trevor finally looked at him, guilt written all over his face. "I didn't mean for this to happen, man," Trevor said weakly. Marcus shook his head. "Get out," he said. "Both of you. Get out of my sight." But neither of them moved. They just stood there, frozen, as if waiting for something, for forgiveness, for understanding, for some sign that this could be fixed. But Marcus had nothing left to give them. He had already given everything, and they had taken it all and thrown it away like it meant nothing. His hands were shaking. His vision was blurred. He could feel his chest tightening, like he could not get enough air. He turned and walked out of the room. He walked down the hallway, his dress shoes echoing on the marble floor. He walked down the stairs, past the groomsmen who were laughing and adjusting their ties, completely unaware that the world had just ended. He walked past the guests who were starting to take their seats in the garden. He walked out the front door of the hotel and into the parking lot. The sun was bright, too bright, and the air was warm, and everything looked so normal, so perfect, like the world had not just ended. His chest was tight. His hands were shaking. He could not breathe. He leaned against a car and closed his eyes, trying to make sense of what just happened, trying to understand how his life had fallen apart in the span of 5 minutes. How does this happen? He thought. How does someone you love, someone you save, someone you give a piece of your body to, how do they betray you like this? And then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, expecting to see Trevor or Cassie coming to beg for forgiveness, to try to explain the unexplainable. But it was not them. It was Cassie's mother, Margaret. She was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair, a woman who had always treated Marcus like a son, who had welcomed him into her family with open arms. She walked up to him slowly, her face full of concern. "Marcus," she said gently, her voice soft. "Are you okay?" "No," Marcus said. He could not lie. Not to her, not anymore. Margaret reached out and touched his arm. "What happened?" Marcus told her. He told her everything. About walking into the room, about Cassie and Trevor, about the 6 months of lies, the betrayal, the way they looked at him when he caught them, like children caught stealing candy, not like adults who had destroyed someone's life. Margaret's face went pale. She looked like she might faint. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Marcus, I'm so sorry." Marcus shook his head. "It's not your fault," he said. But Margaret was not looking at him anymore. She was staring at the ground, her face twisted in pain like she was fighting with herself about something. "Marcus," she said slowly, her voice trembling. "There's something you need to know." Marcus frowned. "What?" Margaret took a deep breath, and when she looked up at him, there were tears in her eyes. Cassie was never sick. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just been dropped, impossible to comprehend. Marcus stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "She was never sick," Margaret repeated, tears streaming down her face now, her voice breaking. She faked the whole thing. She manipulated the test results. She paid off a doctor to say she needed a transplant. And Marcus felt the world tilt beneath him, felt everything he thought he knew crumble into dust. His legs went weak. He gripped the car for support. This could not be real. Why? Marcus whispered, his voice raw. Why would she do that? Margaret covered her face with her hands, sobbing. Because she wanted your kidney, she said, but not to save her life, to sell it. Marcus's mind went blank. The words did not make sense. They could not make sense. Sell it? Yes, Margaret said, her voice muffled by her hands. There's a black market for organs. People pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for kidneys. She and Trevor planned it together. They were going to take your kidney, sell it on the black market, and split the money. But then the transplant actually happened. The kidney went into her body, and she realized she could not sell it anymore. It was inside her. So she kept it. She kept you. She kept pretending. And she started this life with you, planning this wedding, saying she loved you, all while continuing her affair with Trevor. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. They were going to wait until after the wedding, Margaret continued, until your finances were combined, until you had joint bank accounts and shared assets. And then they were going to drain everything and disappear. You were never a fiancé to her, Marcus. You were a mark, a victim, a fool to be used and discarded. And she played you from the very beginning. The kidney donation was supposed to be a quick transaction. Take the organ, sell it, walk away rich. But when the transplant happened for real, when the kidney went into her body instead of onto the black market, they had to change the plan. So they kept you around. They kept the charade going, and they laughed about it the whole time. How do you know this? Marcus finally asked, his voice hollow. Margaret wiped her tears. I found out 3 days ago, she said. I overheard Cassie and Trevor talking in her apartment. I had stopped by to drop off some things for the wedding. They thought I had left, but I was still in the hallway. I heard them laughing about how stupid you were, laughing about how easy it was to fool you, laughing about how much money they were going to make once they cleaned out your accounts. I confronted Cassie that night. She begged me not to say anything. She said she would call off the wedding. She said she would disappear and you would never have to see her again. But I told her no. I told her I would tell you myself if she did not. But she did not listen. She went ahead with the wedding anyway. And I could not let her do this to you, Marcus. Marcus could not speak. He could not think. He could not process what he was hearing. His legs gave out and he sat down on the curb, his head in his hands, his entire body shaking. Cassie, the woman he loved, the woman he saved, had stolen his kidney. Not to live, but to profit. She had lied about being sick. She had manipulated doctors, faked test results, put him through surgery, through pain, through months of recovery, all so she could take a piece of his body and sell it like it was nothing. And Trevor, his best friend, his brother, had been in on it from the start. Margaret sat beside him on the curb, her hand on his shoulder. I'm so sorry, Marcus, she said again, her voice breaking. You did not deserve any of this. You are a good man, the best man I know. And she used that goodness against you. She weaponized your love. Inside the hotel, chaos was beginning. The guests were confused. The ceremony was supposed to start, but there was no groom, no bride, no best man. Whispers spread through the crowd. Where is everyone? What is happening? Is the wedding canceled? Cassie came downstairs, her face pale, her makeup smudged from crying. The bridesmaids surrounded her, asking what was wrong, asking where Marcus was, asking if everything was okay. Cassie did not answer. She just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for Marcus to come back, hoping somehow she could fix this, hoping she could lie her way out of it one more time like she had done so many times before. But Marcus did not come back. Trevor came downstairs next, his face grim, his hands shaking. He walked up to Cassie and whispered something in her ear. She shook her head violently. "No," she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "No, he can't do that," Cassie said, her voice rising. Trevor grabbed her arm. "He already did," Trevor said. "He called the police." Cassie's face went white. "The police?" Trevor nodded. His mother-in-law gave him evidence. Recordings, emails, bank statements, everything. Cassie stumbled backward. The bridesmaids caught her. "What is happening?" Rachel asked. "Cassie, what is going on?" But Cassie could not answer. Her mind was racing. How did Margaret get recordings? How did she get emails? And then she remembered. 3 nights ago. Her mother had been at her apartment. Cassie and Trevor had been talking in the bedroom, laughing about Marcus, about how easy it had been, about how much money they would have soon. They thought Margaret had left, but she had not. She had heard everything, and she had recorded it. Cassie felt sick. This was over. Everything was over. 30 minutes later, 2 police officers walked into the hotel. They walked through the lobby, past the confused staff, through the garden where the guests were seated, waiting for a wedding that would never happen. They walked straight up to Cassie and Trevor. "Cassandra Lee and Trevor King," one of the officers said, his voice loud and clear. "You are under arrest for organ trafficking, conspiracy to commit fraud, and medical identity theft." The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Guests gasped, bridesmaids screamed. And Cassie, beautiful, charming, manipulative Cassie, was handcuffed in her wedding dress, her carefully styled hair falling into her face as the officer read her rights. Trevor was handcuffed too, his head down, unable to look at anyone. They were led out of the hotel in front of everyone, past the flowers and the champagne and the cake that would never be cut, past the life they had tried to steal. As they were pushed into the back of the police car, Cassie looked back one last time, searching the crowd for Marcus. But Marcus was not there. He was already gone. He was sitting in his car in the parking lot, his hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Margaret had given him the evidence she had collected. Recordings of Cassie and Trevor talking, planning, laughing. Emails between them and the corrupt doctor who had falsified the medical records. Bank statements showing payments made for the fake diagnosis. Marcus had called the police, handed everything over, and then walked away. He sat in his car and let the reality of it all sink in. He had lost a kidney. He had lost his fiancée. He had lost his best friend. He had lost the life he thought he was building. But as he sat there, as the shock began to fade and something else took its place, Marcus realized something important. He had not lost himself. He was still here, still breathing, still alive. And that, he realized, was more than Cassie and Trevor deserved, because they had tried to destroy him. They had used him, lied to him, stolen from him, but they had not broken him. And as Marcus started his car and drove away from that hotel, away from the wedding that would never happen, away from the people who had betrayed him, he made himself a promise. He would rebuild. He would heal. And he would never, ever let anyone take from him again. Not his body, not his heart, not his soul, not his life. From now on, he would only give to those who deserved it, and he would never, ever forget what he was worth. He drove for hours, just driving, not knowing where he was going, not caring. He just needed to move, to be anywhere but there. And slowly, very slowly, he began to feel something he had not felt since he walked into that hotel room. He began to feel free. 6 months later, Marcus sat in a courtroom and watched as Cassie and Trevor were sentenced. The trial had been all over the news. The story of the bride who faked kidney failure to steal her fiancé's organ had shocked the nation. People could not believe someone could be so evil, so heartless, so calculated. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Cameras were not allowed inside, but they lined the courthouse steps outside. Marcus sat quietly in the gallery, his hands folded in his lap. He wore a simple dark suit. He had lost weight. His face was thinner, harder, but his eyes were clear. He was not the same man he had been 6 months ago. That man was gone. This was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had survived the unimaginable and was still standing. Cassie got 8 years in federal prison for organ trafficking and fraud. Trevor got 10 years for conspiracy and falsifying medical records. The corrupt doctor who had helped them got 15 years and lost his medical license forever. The judge called it one of the most disgusting cases she had ever seen, a betrayal of trust so deep it shook her faith in humanity. She looked at Cassie and Trevor with pure disgust. "You preyed on a good man's love," the judge said. "You used his kindness as a weapon against him. You deserve every single day you will spend behind bars." Cassie cried as the sentence was read. Trevor hung his head. But Marcus felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, no joy. He just felt tired. Tired of anger, tired of hate, tired of trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. When the gavel came down, it was over. When the sentencing was over, when the gavel came down and Cassie and Trevor were led away in handcuffs one last time, Marcus walked out of the courthouse and into the sunlight. The brightness hurt his eyes. He had spent so much time in dark places, in hospital rooms and courtrooms and the dark corners of his own mind. The sun felt foreign, but also warm, also good. Margaret was waiting for him on the steps. She had been there for every day of the trial, sitting beside him, holding his hand when the testimonies got too hard to hear. She hugged him tight when he reached her. "You're free now," she said, her voice breaking. Marcus nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I am." And for the first time in months, he believed it. He was free. Free from the lies. Free from the manipulation. Free from the people who tried to destroy him. And as he walked down those courthouse steps, Marcus felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt hope. Not the naive hope he had before, the hope that believed people were always good, that love always won, that doing the right thing guaranteed a happy ending. No, this was a different kind of hope. This was the hope that comes after you have been broken and put yourself back together. The hope that says, "I survived the worst, and I am still here." The hope that knows darkness exists but chooses to walk toward the light anyway. Marcus started rebuilding his life. He went back to work. He reconnected with old friends, real friends who had nothing to do with Cassie or Trevor. He started therapy to process the trauma. He worked on forgiving himself for being fooled, for not seeing the signs, for trusting the wrong people. Every morning Marcus looked at the scar on his side, the reminder of what he had given, the proof of his sacrifice. For a long time, he hated that scar. It represented his stupidity, his blindness, his victimhood. But slowly, over months of healing, his perspective changed. That scar was not a mark of shame. It was a mark of survival. It proved that he had loved deeply, sacrificed greatly, and survived complete betrayal. It proved that someone had tried to destroy him and failed. Because the scar remained, but so did Marcus. He was still here, still breathing, still moving forward. And that scar, that permanent reminder etched into his flesh, became a symbol not of what was taken from him, but of what could never be taken. His strength, his resilience, his refusal to let evil win. Marcus learned hard lessons. He learned that not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. He learned that some people see kindness as weakness, love as opportunity, trust as a tool to be exploited. He learned that you can do everything right, love with your whole heart, give everything you have and still be betrayed. And that is not your fault. That is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of the darkness that lives in some people's hearts. But he also learned something else. He learned that you are not defined by what people take from you. You are defined by what you do after they take it. Cassie took his kidney. Trevor took his trust. They both took his dream of a happy marriage. But they could not take his soul. They could not take his capacity to heal. They could not take his future. A year after the trial, Marcus met someone new. Her name was Michelle. She was a teacher, kind and honest and real. She knew his whole story. He told her everything on their third date, expecting her to run, but she did not. She reached across the table and took his hand. "That must have been so hard," she said. "I'm sorry that happened to you." And that was it. No pity, no drama, just acknowledgement and compassion. They took things slow. Marcus was careful now, guarded in ways he had never been before. But Michelle was patient. She understood that trust once broken takes time to rebuild. And slowly, day by day, date by date, Marcus began to believe again. Not in fairy tales, not in perfect love, but in the possibility that good people exist, that real love exists, that he deserved to be happy again. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe for more stories that heal. You're not alone. Join our community of